says, oh, you gotta, when you use it, any of those gaps in there, it's, you gotta get all the punk out. So that was kind of interesting, yep. And I think he told me he was a carpenter for a long time. I mean, it was, his ideas are recording, very worth listening to.
Live streaming.
Good evening. We're almost 5 minutes past the hour, and this is a workshop of the Historic Resources Commission. In attendance tonight, we have myself, I'm the Vice Chair acting on behalf of John Myers, who's chair and usually here and has another thing that he's involved in right now. And commissioners include Jen Garrity, Chris Hacker, Marilyn Kaplan, Lee Pinkney, and we may be joined a little bit later by Aaron Tobin. City staff, we have Aaron Glennon, who is well known to anyone in historic preservation, but we are all delighted to find our historic preservationist planner, Chris Lohman, who is new to the city of Albany, and we look forward to his new set of eyes to look at this 400-year-old city of ours and finds out what we're doing. This is we have at least one person listening online, and tonight's meeting is a public workshop. The commission will review and discuss the agenda items, but will not take any action. If any members of the public wish to provide comments, they have 3 minutes to speak, and must keep all comments to the applications under review.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkney, I need to.
Excuse me, Aaron Tobin just arrived.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
I was coming from Clifton Park and got caught in the rain.
Clifton Park.
I need to recuse myself because I'm involved with the related project.
Okay, thank you very much. We will remember that. The one item involves the construction of 10 new row houses and the renovation of a vacant 2-story row house. This is the second workshop appearance at the HRC. Would the project representative introduce himself, and update the commission on the current proposal and any changes made from the last workshop? The properties in question are in Clinton Avenue, North Pearl Street, Clinton Square historic neighborhood, and we're talking about Clinton Avenue Phase 3, numbers 72, 180, 233, 325-27, 331-333, and 337 Clinton Avenue. The owner is Home Leasing. We will have somebody here representing, they'll be on board via Zoom, and the architect from SWBR, the agency is represented by, would you like to give your introduction? Sure. Tell us what you're up to.
Excuse me 1 second, sorry. Can you give us a context of Chris or Aaron, where this is in terms of all the city reviews?
Sure. So, this is currently, it came to the HRC back at the beginning of the year for a concept review. The environmental review process, seeker, has been going on now for a period of time. The City of Albany Planning Department is acting as the lead agency, and all of the documentation has been circulated to the other involved and interested agencies, because this is also receiving public funding and other sources for affordable housing credits. It went to the state and other involved state agencies. It currently still technically under the state environmental review process, so we are waiting right now on the phase 1B archaeological reports, that came for a number of properties out of the recommendation from the phase 1As. This will have to go back to the planning board for the development plan review process. For the project as a whole, there are the 11 sites within the historic district, those 10 construction sites, and then the 1 renovation sites, and then outside of the district, there will be 1 large multi-unit new construction on the corner of First and Henry Johnson across from the library. And then there's the large number of vacant parcels across the street on Henry Johnson. Those will also be infilled for multi-unit row house style structures. And then on First Street, on the west side, on the western side of First Street, there's a new construction and then a renovation of a property. So as you go west up first, those are all part of this project as well, so.
And any letters yet, 1409 or historic tax credits that you know of?
I don't know that we've received any letters at this time from the State Historic Preservation Office in relation to either of those. But those would probably come once the phase 1Bs have been submitted, so. Yeah, but once we have all that information and the secret process is concluded, then the planning board can take action on the project, and once they take action, it can come back to the HRC for a public hearing and final action on the certificates of appropriateness for all the projects.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Brian Dion with SWBR. Just thank everyone for coming out tonight to talk about this and for your input. The last few meetings we've had, I think it's been really beneficial, improving the project here. And I believe we've addressed most, if not all, of the comments that have been made. And I think the buildings along Clinton Ave are going to really fit in with the neighborhood and be respectful of the context. So that in mind, we've got phase 2 going on right now, so I've been out here quite a bit, and every time I go up and down Clinton, I've been looking at all the buildings that are out there now, taking notes and just kind of reviewing the comments that we've received and addressing those. I don't know if we want to go through each one individually. Can start with it. So, big picture, it's kind of comments that were applied to all the buildings. We've set the entry back into the building, created a little stoop that's common language along the street. Adjusting the proportions of the window locations, the trim, the oriels, and then kind of creating heavier cornices to match the adjacent buildings.
Any comments before we get off this one? In the first drawing, that was the original. And in the one on the right, which is the newer one, it may be just the shadow there, but it looks like it's not centered on the archway that enters in. Is that just the shadow that gives that?
The entry door?
Yeah.
There are 2 doors, 2 entry doors within that stoop.
Well, I'm looking at the railings. The railings still go to the far left and the far right of the opening. Because when you looked at it in the first one, it was uncertain whether they're maybe it's the illusion.
The stair and the railing should be centered up.
Okay, so they are, it's just the shadow that's doing that then. And there's two sets of doors.
Is this a duplex with a garden apartment next to it?
There's access to the unit on the first floor and then stair that goes up to 2 units above. Shared stair.
Okay, so the door on the right, on the west side then is not seen unless you're walking up the street and will barely show if you're walking down the street. Yet it gives a private entrance, so there's an advantage to that. It's an unusual entrance because it doesn't match the outer entrance, which is the open arch. So if anybody has any difficulties with that, it may actually be unparalleled with anything in that entire area. I've never seen a door like that, certainly not on Clinton Avenue in its many blocks of length. Would it have been better to have centered the door, the one going upstairs, which might have been a little indirect on might have intruded on the space of the main part. But on the other hand, the door could then be put through going up the stairs and taking a sharp right and going into a door which would be, because it looks like a wide enough area that it would accommodate a door on the west side of that entrance area. So there'd be a door in the middle for the upstairs apartment or apartments, and there would be a door that would be on the right-hand side, which would open directly in.
Could you go back to the floor plan that you blew up?
That's it.
I'm not troubled by it, it's an interesting comment, I'm not troubled by it. I think the depth of the recess is such that it breaks the plane of the building and the flatness of the building in kind of a nice way. And I'll assume that as that rendering showed, there's a pretty good chance that all of the trim and the doors are painted out one color.
Mm.
And that's what it appeared to be, and so
If we go back to the picture,
Side by side.
you know, my only criticism is it's unprecedented, a little bit disbarring, or take a look at the one on the right. Take a look at that. Do you think that the horizontal lines separating the two doors, or the one is apparently the two doors, would it be better to have a vertical element rather than a horizontal element repeating itself every 4 inches?
yeah.
I think then the color would be better, it'd be softer if they'd all be the same color, and it might make it work. I think the floor plan is probably fine the way it is, it functions for someone living in there, but I think the horizontal barrier in between of these this clapboard doesn't seem to go with anything. If something was vertical in there, I think it would make things look more logical.
It's some trim, so it's not too wide.
Well, you've got to make it a certain width.
Yeah.
It's
And
the
then
film
you
between the
could
doors.
break it up into one wide one and a couple of narrow ones, one on each side.
details, can't remember here, of this, the stoop and the railings?
Yes. If you give me, if you have other comments, give me a minute, Marilyn, and I apologize. They may not have made it to such a, that's my fault.
I think this is a big improvement from March and, you know, clearly you heard what we said and incorporated them well. The two doors don't bother me, but I agree with the Commissioner McEnany, Commissioner Kaplan's suggestions about the trim.
What else changed?
The,
Material.
some added dentils on the corners. And a portion of the Oreo is pulled up.
Right.
It's a little squat before.
And I assume these details, because it was sort of the same detail across all the new construction, that's been changed.
We created a negative space above the lintel on the first floor going up to the oriel window. And it was kept in the first drawing. I don't know which one is preferable or what our objection was at the time. Is it better to have been left so that in the case of the light color goes straight up the minute you hit the lintel on the first one, that the color stays the same all the way to the top of the I always call them bay windows, but technically they're not. Would it look better to have been the way it was?
I don't think so, I think it's a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
If you looked at some precedent for historic buildings in the neighborhood, and there was the line of the top of the trim for the entrance, kind of continuing with the bottom of the oriel.
The dash lines going across represent floor heights?
Yes.
That's right.
Is there another elevation we could look at while you're looking for those?
Did you have any other comment? We can move on to the next one and Brian can run through it. Cause the stoop details are across the board there for all of them.
So they're all going to be fiber cement siding,
Yes.
and are they all, intended to be clapboard in, clapboard in appearance?
Correct.
All of them.
I like how you differentiated the cornices.
Yes, on this one, again with the Oreo, we pulled that up, made the cornices, one of them's a little heavier, more robust, and then separating them so they're clearly delineated townhouses. And then, changing up some of the details, trim around the entryway and the cornices, to differentiate, but also it kind of does repeat a little, so 1 and 3 are the same, 2 and 4 are the same, but there is some variation.
I think 1 and 3 look skimpy, that they don't have at least a little border below the minimal amount of decoration.
At the cornice?
Yeah, if the cornice on 1 and 3 dropped down, or had just a molding of some sort below it, I think it would look more appropriate. Because there's a lot more negative space on 1 and 3 in between the bottom of the cornice and the top of the oriels.
I think the windows got, something changed, the amount of siding or trim or whatever it is above the third floor windows. Doesn't it look like it? Between March and June? It look,
Got a lot of negative space on number 3.
disintegrated.
Yeah, it looks like the rentals did drop a little bit.
I like in March, it's, you know, the top of the Oriole.
Yeah.
Where the third floor windows there.
By the way, if I was saying 1 and 3, I mean 2 and 4.
Yeah, okay.
You mean the
I
blue
think
and the beige, right?
Understood that, yeah.
Well, if you
He's
made the cornices heavier at the blue and the beige one, then it would solve the problem that Commissioner Kaplan's talking about.
Mm-mm.
So,
No, no,
there's still
it's-
a lot of space above the windows on the third floor in the Orioles,
I'm looking at that space,
Oh.
not Jack,
I can move those up. It might
yeah,
have been,
Jack's talking about that space,
taking a look at the sill.
and I'm looking at comparing
Oh.
this space,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, to that space.
that's weird.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe another change was the trim around the windows outside of the Orioles was made a little heavier.
Yeah,
It is. Not much though.
is it enough?
Um,
They,
No.
It'd be a little bit thicker on the
Yeah.
top where the lintel is, and maybe it's all right on the sides. But
yeah,
the
what's
top
the
is,
height of those windows?
Yeah, I was curious about of the grouping of the buildings, how many steps is it to grade or site?
I think there's 2 to 4, depending on which townhouse.
And these houses all have one door? Or no, the
They're
one
all
on the
have
left
two
has
doors.
2 and then the rest have 1.
They're all,
They all have double.
Oh, they all
they're all
have 2.
double doors, yeah.
Oh, and this is a really good illustration of exactly what you were talking about with that weird siding in between those 2 doors.
Mhm.
Yeah,
How would they get the trip?
definitely change.
And do we see that on the first building as well?
Yeah, but it was hard to tell because it was more black and white maybe, or?
How many inches does it require to have both those doors?
Wall. What is the, what do you think the dimensions of those windows are, the second and third floor single windows? And what do you think the width of the trim all around it is?
I think the windows are 2 feet wide.
You think they're only 2 feet, 20 inches wide?
So I don't know if it's
For egress,
with it's gonna be 6 or 8 inches between around them.
are you answering that about the Oriole or about the, so,
It's about 8 inches.
and how about the single, the non-Oriole windows? Those look, as Commissioner Mackey said, they look kind of lost there,
I wonder if they were an afterthought that went in, oh, we need a window there. I think if you gave them just a little bit of a lintel, just on the top only, that would make a difference. I think the sill slightly wider than the sides? These are on the single units.
Erin, can you go back to the other one that we were just looking at, the one that stood alone? Yeah. So could you just do that on the four that we were just looking at? I mean, isn't that what
And
we're
they're
talking about?
taller, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and they're
like
taller
why
and they've
are
got
they,
more.
why are they different?
This is brick with stone sills and heads. Might be a little, I guess we change materials, but it might be a little out of place with the fiber cement lap siding.
Here, I'll show
You could put a wood lintel and sill on, but with the same idea,
Let me
like
233.
And a more
just saw
defined
one
sill
down the
as well.
street.
So
Yeah,
233.
That would look better.
yeah, that's yeah. It's better.
Mhm.
It's not great, but it's better. I feel like that needs a little more of a sill.
I think, and I would add not only the sill, but also the jambs could be a little beefier as well. I think all of it could have a little bit more. The lintel looks about right, a little bit larger to accommodate a wider trim, vertical trim, the jambs, and then a wider sill. That should, and a deeper, heavier sill.
I'm trying to look at that blue house behind you down the street. Looks like it doesn't have great lintels and sills.
They're very flat.
They're very flat. They're flat, but the height is the right height. Unfortunately, everything's in a. Shall we take a field trip?
No, it's raining. So, is it, are we saying that even on these June elevations of 180 Clinton, that the size of the windows that we just saw, what,
That was 233.
anything about those windows, I think they're taller, they're a little larger.
Are those supposed to be the same
I
size as
think
the
they're
others?
all the same size.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe it's just the rendering doesn't convey the size or something.
These are also cropped renderings, so there's a chance that maybe they stretched when I was cutting them. I won't act like snippet sketches is perfect.
So, I guess that's a general comment about the windows and maxing out the size of them based on some of the other elevations that we'll see.
If we look at the original still standing building on the left, we will always be a little bit disappointed when we look at the single windows on floors 2 and 3. They will always look like they're shrunk in some way. And one way that you can make that less disorienting is to put a lintel on the top of each of them and maybe a wider sill underneath them. And then they may be more comfortable being to their old historic next door neighbor. They're not gonna be exact, but we're not saying that they're exact. But I think where they are now, they're shrunk. And it emphasizes the fact that they're not as vertical, not as tall and skinny. On the other hand, if you fake it a little bit with the molding that we call a lintel and a sill, just dealing with the top and the bottom, it'll be more compatible with the historic building to the left. Does anybody agree with that?
Mhm.
It's an illusion, it makes it look tall and thin. Without changing any different.
I think they're too small. I think,
Well,
in addition to what you're speaking to, I think as we go through the other elevations, we will find some where they, not even just an illusion, but they are larger. But we'll see.
Shall we?
Next,
What we'll do is we'll go back through each one of these, see what we remember after we've thought on it a little bit. Let's go to the next group. Single door,
double door.
and now we've moved to double door, that's the change.
Yeah, so again, the creating that stoop,
Yeah.
recessing the doors a little, the larger head on the windows,
I think the short protruding roof is interesting, the new version one.
yeah, so I was trying to create some more variation
Yeah.
between all townhouses, but taking a cue from the neighbor and the roof over their entry. Ignore that trim between the double windows on the first floor.
The windows, the second and third floor windows on the left, the non-oriel windows, are they centered in, they're centered to the door opening at the first floor, it looks like. And are they centered in front rooms on the plan? Because
No,
they're not,
they're railing
It's the shared stairway
stairs.
and then a small sitting room.
so if we can go back to the elevations, does anyone wanna talk about or not whether those windows perhaps might be more close to centered in the field of the siding rather than over to the left, so they would be centered on the second and third floor, but of course not centered then relative to the first floor door opening.
I guess I feel like, and I'm guessing this is a typical detail, now I'm not remembering what we just looked at in the big row and whether those were also centered, but it doesn't really offend me that much to not have it be centered, because you've got the oriel. So like, it's not like the 3-bay brick building next to it where everything's centered. So I feel like it might, I think if you move the windows open, I'd want the doors to move over.
No, yeah,
So then
they
it
can't
becomes the
connect
whole
the plane.
thing. I think visually, I kind of would prefer to see it the way it is.
And then Erin, can you zoom in as close as you can so that we can see the full elevation of the oriel? And what kind of, can you go closer? No more? That's it,
Or, well,
because the oriels are really important features that you brought forward and that will be prominent on the buildings. And what kind of trim, what kind of reveal, what kind of shadow lines, et cetera, I think will be very important, because we're investing a lot of real estate into those areas,
I think,
but they're flat
I
right
think,
here.
well, the earlier version, they aren't flat. There's much more detail separating the third and the fourth and the second floor, so if you go back to where you have two side-by-sides, see how much detail there is separating the second and third floor? And
It
see
looks
how
like there's
plain
more.
and plush it is on the new version.
Yeah,
In that case, excluding the issue of the little roof that's put on top of it.
Yeah.
Excluding that, in a lot of ways, I like the first version better. I like the breakup in it.
yeah, and the proportion of the windows, like you've got that odd negative space on the two oriel windows on the second floor that you don't have on the March elevation.
Erin, can you zoom into the March elevation? Yeah,
Yeah, it's much nicer.
It is nice.
Dan, how deep are the Oriole windows?
About a
Or
foot,
do they protrude?
1 foot.
Just about.
What's the side, how you're gonna treat, do we know, from any drawings, how you're gonna treat the side, that 12-inch wide side of the Orioles, in terms of trim or materials?
It would be the same, whatever's on the front face would return.
So like a flat PVC panel.
I don't understand what the T is, on the two bottom windows.
Oh, didn't ignore.
That's a mistake.
That's a mistake?
Yeah, that, the trim should be between the lintel and the sill.
Okay.
I just wanna say I appreciate the challenge of having designed a whole bunch of new buildings that are differentiated and blend into the historic fabric and meet the proportions and have some creativity.
With the exception of the little roof that's been added on top. I like the first one a lot better than what we're looking at now. Does the first one have the lintel over the single windows?
Mm-mm.
Well then, that's an improvement, having the little,
Mhm.
you know, so that's an improvement. The little roof is an improvement.
Mhm.
And after that, we could have kept it the same. I think when redesigning it, they were uncomfortable about the floating windows that are surrounded by a negative image, so they put the white lintel above and a same color in between the two windows, so that is better than having the two lonesome unconnected windows with nothing except the jambs and that type of thing. So I mean, there's 3 improvements that have been made. The only place that it seemed to have a problem was with the plainness of the 2 Orioles.
I think my recommendation would be to take the Oriole details from March and put them on the June elevation.
Yeah.
But keep the roof. And then, like we were talking about with the single windows, beef up the sill, beef up the sides of the trim
And the lintels.
and the lintels, yeah. And you can see more, those look a little, but like you can see it even in the building next door. Ish, like, I feel like we need to find like a good example.
So question on the cornice, it got a little taller, but either how it's rendered or something else, they read really differently.
Question is,
Did they
now,
project? Did it project further? What is the depth of it?
Yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head, but it did get taller, deeper.
in its own right, it doesn't need to have that depth. But when it's next to the historic building on its right, then you understand why you find it more compatible if it's extra wide, because the original, the historic building next to it has an extra wide cornice on it.
When you say wide, Jack, are you referring to tall?
Up and down tall.
Up and down tall?
Yeah.
So if you can go back to the side, so that's kind of this,
In this drawing, they touch, and there's no negative space between the top of the little sloping roof
Mhm.
and the bottom of the cornice. And in the front, it looks like there's a little bit of negative space in between the two. And with this one, there's no negative space.
well, I don't know if the end brackets, that's what I'm trying to get at, I don't know if they're brackets. I don't know how far they project, or the
Oh.
end brackets different than the intermediate ones. If you go back to the elevations, I don't.
I mean, if the sides of our Orioles are 12 inches, the cornice is shallower than the actual Oriole windows. At least in this drawing.
Right. So I'm sorry, the side by sides again, I don't know if it's rendered differently or if also it was
I think it is,
really
but I think
redesigned.
there's two, it's a new cornice, with different profile brackets, but also, it was rendered with shadows. Whereas the March one wasn't, so the March one looks a little flatter.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we've been paying attention to the cornices and elevation, and it will be good to look at a section as well. Because some of the adjacent ones, like one that was just referenced, that's probably a good 18 inches, 24 inches deep.
Oh, probably 24, that's substantial.
That was a big one, yeah.
Yeah.
So what would your guess be the total width of the cornice in the soffit? Yeah.
One on the right, that might be 10 inches. Not significant.
You're talking the depth, how much it.
Correct.
Protrudes.
Correct. Yeah, that'll be good to, those are important elements, that'll be good to know. That, it's only 4-6 inches there, right? If the Oriel's a foot, that's pretty light.
That's very like 6 inches.
So that can change.
The advantage is the sloping roof, which is the disadvantage of not having the negative space, separating the elements of the cornice and of the Oriels. So they're independent elements. A cornice is a cornice, it stands by itself, and it has a certain elegance to it. And the same thing happens with the bank of the Oriels. And to separate these very unique things, we have negative space with contrasting color, both above and below the Oriels. When we go to the June, the June proposal, we solve one problem by making the cornice deeper in terms of up and down space, and also literally deeper, probably in protruding as well. But then to make it a little bit different in a much larger context along the street, we add the little roof. And the little roof goes up, and that independence between these architectural units of the double Oriels, two-story Oriels, and the more complicated cornice means that now they're mushing together. They lose their identity anymore. They now merge into one huge amount. And you wonder if the negative space, which made each one stand out in its own right, has its disappearance has lost something. That each independently, the cornice and the bank of Oriels, had a greater power in their own light by having that negative space in between. Now you've created this as opposed to that.
I would consider giving up the little pent roof in favor of a
Then you could,
deeper cornice.
then you could have your negative space.
So what
again.
you're speaking of, it doesn't bother me to
Yeah.
touch, but that's here, but
Yeah.
if that's what all of our buildings have, is deep cornices and shadow lines and so as large as we can get that in proportion to now your,
I like the cornice, but I think the negative space had value in what it gave to its partners. Or its neighbors. You won't even see it unless you're across the street, but across the street you would see it. So that would mean back to the original bank of the Orioles as proposed in March. Which means no roof. Are we confused enough now that we move to the next one?
Workshops are fun.
I mean, if the depth of the Oriole is 12 inches or a foot, it probably needs to exceed closer to 18.
Yeah, the
It's-
cornice, the
it
depth,
needs
the
to-
depth of the cornice,
And
Yeah.
No matter what.
And that's probably an across the board recommendation.
I would think so too.
Would you say that again, Aaron?
I think that's an across the board recommendation for all of the, for the ones that we've already kind of looked at as well. We hadn't really talked about the depth of the cornice, but I think it's a really important point. And maybe it's just, I don't ever sit here, but I'm like looking at those three buildings. And like, those are the cornices, that we want, the green, the yellow, and the blue.
Yes, and
Which are all new construction buildings, yeah.
They're new?
They're, well,
I
from the
mean, they're
eighties or
not-
nineties probably.
Yeah, those are nice cornices, I think.
Yeah.
I've actually even been kind of admiring this kind of modern bracket cornice right here, because it's like, kind of funky and modern. I don't know.
There's an old cornice under that.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
they boxed it in.
They boxed it
They
in.
boxed it in. Well, at least they boxed it in with some kind of design. But so if you're in the neighborhood, like I guess I'm just saying, like those are good examples in terms of what we're talking about with the depth and and same with the window surroundings.
And the blue one down the street, which now I can see if I lean back, that's a substantial overhang.
Yeah.
And it works very well.
Are we gonna see some buildings tonight that do not have Oriole windows?
What else do we have to?
Just the renovation.
Of course, it's get small.
Where are we now?
So this is 325 through 327 Clinton Avenue.
I would say that whatever is next to the door on the left, of the building on the left, should be as close as possible the exact same color of the door itself.
Are these two-door units again, where we just can't see the second door? Or are these one-door units? Oh, you
Yes.
put the door on the side. Yeah, I would say definitely no clapboard inside the vestibule.
And keep the colors the same.
So look at the horizontal band between the lowest course of siding and the foundation.
The big white
Yeah,
band.
and I think this is the first rendering that we've looked at this evening that shows that. Go back, Aaron, go forward, go back. Cause I was,
I was clockwork difference.
yeah,
You're right.
Sorry.
That one's brick.
Is there,
What about the row, the long row?
They did not have it.
yeah,
usually the detail is below the magic line, not above it. The floor line. Usually if you have something like that, it's on the water table. It's thought to be a part of the top of the foundation
Foundation.
rather than the bottom of the flexibility. I don't know, maybe there's precedent for it, I don't remember seeing that type of thing. Usually the contrasting stone or color or material is usually something that's done to the foundation at its top and not to the bottom of the addition on top where the people live. it may have an attempt also by being relatively wide, it may have the effect of shortening the building to your eye. If the line was down below in the dark area of the foundation, it makes the building look taller and it emphasizes its vertical qualities. When you put the band on the bottom, you shorten the vertical qualities, and everything in that Victorian age is vertical whenever you can do it that way.
In the beige building, in the June rendering, again, the oriole got a little bit taller, it looks like, and I would say push it back down. You've got that additional band of white space above the two windows on the third floor.
Go back to March, in other words.
Yeah, to the height of the oriole on the second floor in March. Something changed with the proportions.
You really mean, I think, the space between the bottom of the cornice and the top, because the cornice might have changed too, Erin.
I mean, here,
Yeah,
this, so,
that's
sorry,
pretty narrow.
in this.
Yeah.
It should look like this and this, I think are better. And it's sort of the same, I don't really
So I
know.
think what happened was pulled the bottom of that oriole up. So the distance from the bottom of the oriole to the windowsill was maintained at the second and the third floor. And so when you take that it pulled that trim up at the third floor as well, so there becomes a larger space between the trim and the head of the second floor windows. And to match that up at the third floor as well, it bumped the height of the oriole up to be consistent with the amount of white around the windows. So if we were to drop the top of the oriole down to be less white space, it wouldn't match the space between the third floor trim and the second floor windows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I guess if the foundation was taller, they could lift it up and put it the same height as the other one.
Well, we're not talking about, are we talking about the foundation being taller, the overall building?
I'm not sure. I think it's kind of odd that the windows are so low. That is
Yeah,
the entry floor.
yes.
Unfortunately, I think they'd have to be a whole lot smaller.
Actually, I think there's a different problem, because look, on the March elevation, it looks as if the building on the right only has one or two risers, right?
We did have to raise the building.
Yeah, you raised the buildings, because of the below. Okay, so
We were planning on having these at or at grade.
these were the accessible,
These were two of the escalators.
But now they're not.
Now they're not. We received a comment from one of the departments of the city that it needed to be raised up. I think it had to do with the grade at the back.
well, it's better for the, I mean, the height above the sidewalk is to the advantage of the buildings, the visuals, I think, of the buildings, for sure. Looks like the bays need a little more focus. Trim, proportions, above, below. Side panels, trim. Overall height. Funny, these two, in this rendering, they look tiny. They look tight, right? They're narrow and shorter.
It's because of their fat next door neighbor on the
It's
left.
because of their fat, yeah.
That's why that's happening.
And
the
their
same-
tall neighbor on the right.
And the same thing's happening in other side.
This is 331 and 333. These four buildings are just separated by this pink building.
This is the second example of the wide horizontal stripe that's above the basement level. Now, these are the walk-ins.
These are the accessible
Okay,
units.
so maybe in this case that provides a sense of a basement underneath it when in fact it doesn't really have one. So in that case, that helps. In the other two, it was a question.
So because Commissioner Kaplan had brought up the centering of the second and third story windows in the entrance, whether there or centered on the building, I'll just note that in these, and maybe even in the ones we just looked at, now those windows are not centered, but
No,
in
they-
other renderings, they were centered
Yeah.
on different buildings.
And they're
And-
close, but just to often that you notice it.
Yeah, so
Why aren't
if
they
it's
centered?
possible to center them on the entrances.
So the entryways could be more towards the center of the building, that little bit of clapboard siding on the side.
Yeah.
And same with the building on the left, it would go right, or the right would go left.
Yeah, like push them in a little bit.
Yeah. And maybe we lose some of that exposed clapboard. I think it's gonna be somewhat of a challenge, how do you fill that space with what?
Yeah.
Stained glass window,
Whoa, nice.
think big.
Parts warehouse?
Yeah,
See, it's the same thing.
Tough space to fill.
These get mailboxes,
Yes,
so
they're inside the stoop.
they're
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, that's the gray box that the was commented should match the door color.
So the mailboxes will be one of that question of how do you detail that space?
Yeah.
The mailboxes will have a real presence there. How about exterior lighting?
Put a ceiling light inside the stoop.
Does it need to be ceiling mounted? Can it be wall mounted?
I suppose it could be. Sure.
That would help with some of that space as well.
Yeah.
Renovation?
Oh, this one.
Oh, this one, yeah. Wow. This we talked about how important it was because of its corner location, right? That the side was really important.
It's not a corner location though, isn't there?
Or because that it was so exposed, right?
So this one has the mural on the side.
Yeah.
And there would be a little pocket park, I guess, to the left of it. So it will be a corner building.
So
I like it looking like a storefront. I mean, that's its tradition. At one point, it was neither residential nor, and now that base makes it look like it's one unit, that it was a storefront. I don't know how it works inside.
and it is gonna be residential on the first floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you keeping, it looks like you went to maybe a historic window, are you keeping the original windows in there? Is that why we see 2 over 2s now and?
No, there'll be new windows to match the ones that are in there now.
Cause the ones that are in there now are not salvageable.
Right. Yeah, they're deteriorated.
Dan, would you say that the size of the windows from March to June are the same? 'Cause
They look a lot skinnier.
yeah, or the comment I was gonna make around that is that whole discussion we just had about what kind of trim around the second and third floor windows. It really does expand the appearance of the openings on the left side. But they look like they got smaller, do you think?
They probably did. The one on the right is the actual photo of the building.
That's an actual photo of the building?
Yes.
Oh,
Except for the storefront, obviously. It's got a ladybug on it.
well, that's why I was confused.
But that is the cornice that's underneath what's out there now.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah.
the windows that are there.
Oh,
This door, that's the door that's there.
It-
Pediment above the door.
And are those the actual windows that are there? Like, that's actually a photo? And they're really too far gone to be repaired?
Well, I think this is
It's
part
been
of the simulation
photoshopped.
over, yeah,
Okay,
these aren't, yeah, the existing windows.
okay. I mean, I drive by there like every day, I just don't know why I'm not.
Is this handicap accessible? No. Okay.
what kind of glazing? So that's a residential unit on the first floor?
Yeah.
So what's the glazing you got going in?
That's a good question.
Is it frosted, is it powdered, is it?
They could be frosted.
It's a lot of glass.
It's a lot of glass, yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we would leave it all clear.
no. It might be, when you figure that out, what makes sense, that the transoms might be clear. I mean, just a thought, and the lower area a frosted of something such that it gets a nice see out and see daylight. And you'll get otherwise there'll be some light coming in the lower ones, but you need privacy there, but you should be able to see out and get some sun.
And there's gonna be an indentation to where the door is no longer useful. Interesting.
Is that gonna be their entrance to the unit?
No.
Is the storefront door?
No,
No.
it'll be a false door, but entrance, both units use that double doors entrance.
It'll be a door that's fixed or sealed door.
Why did you come to that decision versus having its own entrance, where the entrance was? Right?
Sure, there is an entry door off of the stair hallway
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I think entering into close to the kitchen area
Mhm.
makes more sense than in the middle of the
Mhm.
living room.
If you had the old door opened up, it'd be too narrow for code, I believe.
Well, at least the storefront's there, so if in 20 years that wants to become a commercial space again, it could be.
Sure.
Did anybody see the projects that the Landmark did on Second Street? With the storefront that we looked at?
Oh,
4850 Second Avenue,
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
look pretty.
it came out very nice,
Oh, nice.
yeah, if you have a chance to drive by, I would drive by and take a look
Yes.
at it.
Yes, I did.
Second Ave, you said.
Second Avenue.
What address?
There was the two.
48 and 50 Second
Yeah.
Avenue,
I remember those.
Second Avenue and Odell Street. Across from the school.
Are the transoms gonna be operable? there's no operable windows in those front living rooms. On the first, could you go back to the plan, please? Or the elevation, sorry, yeah, nice if they, even if it was the panel above the door,
Yeah, at least the one
Something.
above the door.
use that one.
This is well outside of our jurisdiction, but in the plan, it looked like, are there gonna be like window seats in that storefront?
You can go back to the plan. So there's a couple photos on the left of the existing condition. So they're like display cases.
Yeah,
I imagine those would all be retained, restored.
the display cases?
Shippo would probably wanna see that, right?
But the display cases are enclosed.
But then they lose all that space. I bet Shippo would let you take the doors off and make them into window seats. If you keep the platform, like the bagel shop we had in Troy
Yeah.
when, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're south facing, if you
Just
make
to
little
give
greenhouses.
like more nice space in the apartment and like that window seat in the bagel shop in Troy was a
Yeah,
really nice
very
place to
nice.
sit. You have some pillows, you just like, I can't believe they would make you keep a display case in
It's a great place for plants.
great place for plants.
That's true.
This is not in our jurisdiction. This is, I'm sorry. I haven't had dinner yet, I'm getting punchy.
Me neither.
Has any of us, any of us like
License.
to do that?
No.
You could also make all the exterior glass clear, and the internal glass
That's right,
could provide the privacy,
right,
Mm,
and the
Nice.
plants
that's
would
another
like it.
idea,
Whatever cap.
nice.
yeah. Are we through?
That,
Notice nobody's complained about the lack of a lintel, or a sill on the second floor, because that's the way it was. That's the way it was. And it was always clapboard.
I think there's a little bit of a, I
And I
think there's a protruding sill there,
I think that's the,
Yeah.
oh no, that's still there,
yeah.
Yeah,
that's the original.
it's
Yeah.
just something's odd about that picture to me, but
Yeah.
it looks like a live simulation.
That building and its companion next to it, whoever did it had made no intention had no intention of having them, other than to meet the interior need, so that there are different distances in between windows, and nothing's quite, it's a lot easier on the new proposal than the old one. You know, it's hard to say, nobody made an effort where Brooklyn is to go and put some of the windows in the middle so that they all matched.
I suspect that happened without HRC review.
They had to,
Yeah.
they had to resume. So how do you handle the west side of the road?
The mural,
Yeah,
It's staying, right?
Yes, it'll either be restored or if it's starting to fall apart right now. So if it's too far gone at that point, it'll be recreated.
I mean, could there be a plan to take it down, do whatever conservation work it needs, and have it mounted off the building? So you can complete that side of the building.
I think they could reproduce that mural exactly, it's a modern
Sure they could.
piece of art, and same, I think Concert Passes does those, I'm not sure.
Yeah, he did that.
And they photograph it and then it's
Are you Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Adam Driscoll. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that we've spoken with the artist, Samson. I can't remember his full name, but he is super excited to restore or replace or whatever needs to be done with the mural. He's 100% on board with helping recreate it.
So then you're going next to the 11,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
they pay one on top of that. I love art.
Did you want me to go back through any of them? Do you have any other questions for Brian? Oh, stoop details, that's. Brian, I think in March.
This is slightly different, from what we would have. This is from the phase 1, phase 2 projects.
Okay.
But that sidewalk would continue flush under those stairs, since we don't have any basement units in this project. But it is a painted wood stair with a aluminum railing.
So maybe we should look at that at a different time.
Yeah, and we can,
Call that difference.
if you have a chance to drive down Clinton Avenue and look at any of the properties that have been rehabbed, I mean, the railings that are on them are pretty substantial compared to like what other modern metal handrails are being installed, so they are
Great.
compared to a lot of new stuff, very appropriate for the district. I think to quote an HRC member, they're hefty, which is what has been the hefty.
I was reading something today that somebody wrote, it was otherwise well written, they used the word pesky.
Pesky.
Yeah, it was some bit of, some detail problem. It was the technical writing and they used the word pesky. Yeah.
So any other,
Do we need to go back on any of the previous ones, whether there's any major disagreements on?
Do you have?
I've got my notes.
Okay. You have your notes.
I'm sure she'll share notes with me, or share notes, so.
yeah.
I think then that we've given it a good airing, and you've certainly met us in many areas where we did have concerns. And in a couple of cases, we've gone back to the way it was, saying it was better the first time, so. It's a this is when the stroke kick comes. But we appreciate all that you're doing, appreciate the overall effort that you're making for Arbor Hill, Clinton Avenue, and I think it's now to go back to the drawing board and to work with the agencies that you're already dealing with, and we have our own planner to help us with now, the historic preservation person and our expert who's with us for everything, and let's keep moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other issues that the members would want to bring up while we're here together?
Did I miss, are you the new presentation
Oh,
planner?
this is Chris Hillman.
Sometimes we have corporation counsel here, so like, I just.
Yep, Chris Lemon, our new preservation planner.
Nice to meet you.
Chris,
I guess I was just gonna make one quick comment that the 1B report was submitted to SHPO for this project. And Erin's gonna send it to all of you guys, just in case you wanna look it over.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk about it more in depth when we all come back for this.
Can you give us the highlights, anything interesting?
No, nothing, it was, I mean, and I think it was only 233 Clinton that was that's in the report that we're reviewing? Does that sound right?
Well, no, I think 233, 108, 108 Clinton, it's in the, oh, give me one moment, I can tell you.
Aaron, I think it was also one of the dual grouping.
Yes, I think you're right, it's,
They're right next to each other, so I don't remember which one.
233,
Yeah.
123, 125,
Yes.
127, 129,
131.
131, 133 Henry Johnson Boulevard, 248, 251st Street, yes, so,
But not all
but
of
so
those.
230, you were right, 233 is the only one within the historic district that requires a legal fee.
Gotcha, yeah. And, no archaeological sites were found at any of, at 233 Clinton, that's the one we're concerned with, but at any of them,
But I
so.
do believe, that 180, Clinton Avenue does, will need to have mitigation because it was a dry cleaning. The property that's currently there is a dry cleaners and
Yep.
one. Right, Adam?
Yes, that's correct. We are in the process of working through the brownfield cleanup program on that site. We've been unofficially, I think it's termed unofficially accepted into the brownfield cleanup program.
Okay.
So, yep.
Okay.
Are there any other issues anybody want to bring before the board while we're here together for the commission?
Just Chris and I did attend the Historic Albany Foundation Restoration Fair on Sunday. They had very good turnout, and a lot of people that were there tabling. Really good demonstrations for window repair, reglazing, and other programs that are available to property owners who have historic properties or own properties within the capital region, so it was very good. Yep.
We have a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All in favor?
I
Motion unanimous.
Now,
We're still waiting.
focus on dinner.
You're still waiting.